On the West Coast, 3 o'clock in Washington, where a top Republican is now comparing President Trump to Richard Nixon.
It's now accelerated. Watergate took many months, and this thing seems to be taking hours.
And now GOP leaders demand answers. Did President Trump request that James Comey drop the FBI investigation of the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn? For now, the White House denies it. And the president today accusing the media of treating him worse than any other politician. Now one Democratic congressman is calling for impeachment, but other Democrats are saying not so fast. And then there's Vladimir Putin offering to clear up the controversy over whether President Trump shared highly classified information with the Russians. Putin also comparing American politics to a mental illness. Let's get to it.
Now, Shepard Smith reporting live from the Fox News Deck.
And first from the Fox News Deck this afternoon, the Michael Flynn investigation has taken a dramatic turn on Capitol Hill. Some of the most powerful committees in all of Congress are demanding that the FBI turn over any memos involving James Comey's conversations with the president. They're also asking Comey to testify and in public. And one of the highest profile Republicans of them all is comparing the controversy to Watergate. Here's what the Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman John McCain said last night at a dinner for members of the International Republican Institute.
The only thing I can say is I think we've seen this movie before. I think it's reaching the point where it's of Watergate size and scale and a couple of other scandals that you and I have seen. It's a centipede that the shoe continues to drop. And every couple of days there's a new aspect of this really unhappy situation. And you know, my friends, none of us, no matter what our political leanings are, no matter how we feel about Trump, feel this is not good for America.
Really unhappy situation. Senator McCain today expanded on those comments in an interview with Fox News.
I was using that and Iran-Contra and other like similar situations, not just Watergate, Iran-Contra. The way Ronald Reagan was able to overcome Iran-Contra was he got everything out so there were no more questions so the country could move on. That's what we need to do now, is get all the information out and then move forward.
Sunshine as the best disinfectant. Senator McCain is a former Republican presidential nominee, obviously, who has served on Capitol Hill for decades. He said while Watergate took many months, this latest White House scandal seems to be taking hours. All of this comes after a report that President Trump asked the then FBI Director James Comey to stop investigating the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, and that Comey kept a memo about the conversation. The New York Times broke the story, other news organizations followed, and Fox News has now confirmed. Sources close to James Comey say the president made the request the day after he fired Michael Flynn for lying about his conversations with the Russians before the inauguration, or that was the reason they gave. According to the Comey memo, Director Comey was in the Oval Office with other top officials when the president asked everybody else in the room to leave, including the Vice President Mike Pence and the Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Everybody out but the two men. And that's when the memo indicates the president asked James Comey to stop investigating Michael Flynn. According to the document, the president told Comey, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. And he's a good guy. I hope you can let this go." The memo indicates the president also told Director Comey he should consider putting reporters in prison for publishing previously classified information. The White House has denied the memo's account of what happened. And the president today blasted the news media while delivering a commencement speech to graduates of the United States Coast Guard Academy. He said, "You can't let them get you down. You can't let the critics and the naysayers get in the way of your dreams." President Trump fired James Comey last week, and the president later admitted Russia was on his mind when he made the decision. President Trump also suggested on Twitter that he might have tapes of his conversations with the FBI director. The White House refuses to confirm or deny that recordings exist. Now it appears the former FBI director may have responded through sources to that warning by beating the president to the punch. The Senate Intelligence Committee today asked James Comey to testify and in public and behind closed doors. It also requested that the FBI turn over any notes or memos that Director Comey may have written about his conversations with the White House. Top members of the Senate Judiciary Committee have now requested any and all memos as well, and they've asked the White House to turn over any tapes or recordings. Republican Senate Judiciary Committee member Lindsey Graham said in a statement, "The sooner Mr. Comey testifies publicly before the Judiciary Committee, the better for our nation. For all practical purposes, the political process will be ground to a halt by these allegations." The chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Jason Chaffetz, a Republican, has already called on the FBI to turn over any Comey memo, if it exists. In a tweet yesterday, he warned, and I quote, "I have my subpoena pen ready." We'll have more ahead on the comments from Chairman Chaffetz. And while some Republicans are demanding answers, one GOP congressman has gone a step further. The House Oversight Committee member, Justin Amash, tells the Hill newspaper, if the president did ask the FBI director to quash the investigation, the issue would merit an impeachment. The congressman added, but everybody gets a fair trial in this country. That trial would be in the Senate, hypothetically. House Speaker Paul Ryan is standing by the president. He says he expects Congress to hear from James Comey, but he also warns Republicans, do not jump to conclusions, and says we need the facts.
It is obvious there are some people out there who want to harm the president, but we have an obligation to carry out our oversight regardless of which party is in the White House. And that means before rushing to judgment, we get all the pertinent information.
A reporter later shouted a question at Speaker Ryan, asking him if he has full confidence in the president, and Speaker Ryan responded, I should say, I do. Some lawmakers have also been targeting President Trump after reports that he shared highly classified intelligence with Russia's foreign minister and the Russian U.S. ambassador, who is also a Russian spy. The Washington Post and others report it happened during a meeting at the White House the day after the president fired Director Comey. The White House says the information was, quote, wholly appropriate. McMaster said that phrase 9 times. Today, the Russian President Vladimir Putin has weighed in, finally. He's offered to hand over recordings of that meeting to help settle the controversy, as he put it. Much more ahead on the latest reaction from Capitol Hill. First, we're learning new information about Director Comey and his memo. And for that, we turn to the Chief Intelligence Correspondent, Catherine Herridge, live in Washington. Catherine?
Well, thanks, Chip. We just heard a moment ago from the senior Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee that wants those Comey memos. And with a crush of reporters, Senator Warner said he is confident Comey will appear and that the Bureau had never asked for additional help.
I think we have enough. The FBI has indicated they have enough resources. That was reiterated by Acting Director McCabe in public hearing last Thursday, and also was reiterated that Acting Director McCabe said this investigation is extraordinary significance to the FBI, and they're going to make sure they get to the bottom of the truth of it, no matter where it leads.
In addition to the Senate Intelligence Committee request, the Republican chairman of the Judiciary Committee with the most direct oversight of the FBI is requesting that the Bureau also provide any notes or memos prepared by the former director and shared with his deputy, Andrew McCabe, under the Obama administration. So this request now expands the record search to the 2016 election, when Comey felt he had to speak publicly about the Clinton case because his boss had the appearance of a conflict after Attorney General Lynch met with Bill Clinton on an Arizona tarmac just 1 week before Hillary Clinton's FBI interview. And within the last few minutes, we've had a new tweet from Congressman Jason Chaffetz, who's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, and he says he's getting a hearing on the calendar but waiting on Comey, writing that he has a new contact number, Shep.
Yeah. Catherine Herridge, in your reporting, you're in contact with a lot of people who are in the know, and I'm curious to know what they're telling you, big picture, about all this.
Well, a law enforcement source told Fox News that because of his background as a lawyer, career prosecutor, and working within the government, Comey really is a copious note taker, and it's standard practice at the Bureau and the Justice Department to take notes during or immediately after a meeting to memorialize the conversation. And the timing of all of this really has people's attention today. If you remember, in early March, 2 weeks after this meeting between Comey and the president, he publicly stated his intent to serve out his 10-year term during a speech at Boston College on cybersecurity. And the comments have struck current and former agents as noteworthy and possibly reflecting Comey's unease after that Flynn meeting.
Boston College is a leader in thinking and educating on these incredibly important issues. So this is a great place to have it. Hope you'll do it many more times. You're stuck with me for about another 6.5 years.
pretty unusual for a serving FBI director to talk about serving out his fixed term, or typically what's a fixed term of 10 years. And as a final note, there really is a precedent for using FBI notes. There was a dispute in the Bush era over the issue of surveillance, and then FBI Director Robert Mueller provided his notes to validate Comey's version of events. Shep.
On the matter of Michael Flynn himself, anything new?
Well, we haven't heard sort of Flynn's side of the story for some time, and according to people close to the former national security advisor, he never asked President Trump to interfere or block any of these federal probes. Quote, Flynn never spoke to the president about trying to end or influence any ongoing government investigations of him. That's what we were told. The source could not speak directly to Trump's private conversations, but he also said it was significant that the former acting Attorney General Sally Yates, who's just given an interview to the New Yorker magazine, confirmed that Flynn's name appeared unredacted, so in plain sight in those intelligence reports. They said that's pretty extraordinary, and they see it from their point of view as more evidence that Flynn was singled out by the previous administration. Shep.
Catherine Herridge on the Hill. Catherine, thanks a lot. You're watching here on the screen. The president has come back from his speaking engagement at the Coast Guard Academy, where he gave the commencement address in which he ripped into the news media again. Man. The cameras are there because, you know, there's always the hope he might come to a microphone and say something, and it's a pool camera, and it's like it's on a boat at times. But he'll get into one of those choppers and get off that plane, get in one of those choppers, and head on back to 1600 in just a minute. Meantime, Democrats are renewing their calls for a special prosecutor in the Russia investigation after the report about Comey's memo. But it's also, to some degree at least, dividing the party, because there are different theories on how to process. Some Democrats are saying there's no question this was obstruction of justice. For instance, listen to the Texas Congressman Al Green on the House floor this morning.
I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America for obstruction of justice. There is a belief in this country that no one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States of America.
Congressman Green on the extreme on one end of the Democratic Party. We haven't heard anything else quite like that. Other Democrats, including the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, are warning not to go to that extreme.
No one ought to, in my view, rush to embrace, the most extraordinary remedy that involves the removal of the president from office. But I think we're a long way from knowing the facts here. At this point, among the most serious allegations are just that today. They're allegations that appeared in a newspaper report, but there are also allegations that will be easily subject to proof.
Other Democrats also say it's too soon to talk about impeachment, but that's not stopping many of them. That word is being used in Washington and often. Let's listen for a second here. Net's full. Chances of hearing much of anything are, I guess, slim to none, but there's a pool reporter there. Maybe we'll get a question shouted. You never know. It is, to some, well, he's waving now. It is remarkable, notable at least. I don't know if it's remarkable. It's notable that his tweet storms have ended. The Twitterization of the president seemed to have ebbed a bit just yesterday after this information about memos. And make no mistake, the word is there's not a memo. There are lots of memos. Lots of memos that FBI Director Comey he'd taken notes of this kind, copious notes, as it's been described to me, going back to the Bush administration. And apparently, if you're an FBI agent, the word sort of is, if it isn't written down, it didn't ever happen. So it's not unusual at all for copious notes to be taken on matters, especially when dealing with somebody, well, the leader of the free world, and especially when, as Director Comey has said through sources or, communicators, that he was uneasy with some of the conversations. And it's our understanding that he was uneasy with more than one conversation and that there is more than one note. Do I know this? I do not know this. We will know soon enough. Peter Ducey's on Capitol Hill. Peter, the divide on the Democratic side, it's not so much if anybody's supporting him, they're not. It's about how extreme they're going, at least on the day.
Right, and Shep, the most extreme was that Democratic Congressman Al Green, who called for President Trump's impeachment on the House floor today. And when he did that, he was rebuked, Green was, right away by the Republican Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, who was presiding. And Fitzpatrick reminded Green he can't just make unproven accusations like obstruction of justice like that against the president on the floor of Congress. And there are very few Democrats that we've heard from who are willing to publicly push for impeachment like Green right now. The week did start off with Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi saying that she doesn't think her side has a case against President Trump yet, and it has continued now even after all of these leaks, with Democratic leadership trying to gather information before they publicly push for impeachment against President Trump.
I'm not afraid of the I word. It's independent commission, independent investigator. That's what I support. That's also the general consensus of our Democratic leadership.
So he's saying the I word that he likes is investigation, not impeachment. Congresswoman Maxine Waters did say just yesterday that she basically prefers impeachment over her side, the Democrats winning back the White House in 2020, but that is not a very widely held view among Democrats in the House or in the Senate. I talked to a few Democratic senators a few hours ago, and they're basically saying that before there can be any talk about impeachment, they need to know more about this Russia case than just what they've read in the paper. Some of your colleagues in the House, Democratic colleagues, are already talking about impeachment. Do you think that it's time for that?
I'm a prosecutor. I want to see the evidence. I don't think it's time to talk about anything like that until we see the evidence.
Senator Angus King, an independent from Maine who votes often with the Democrats, last night said he thought that we were moving toward impeachment, but he very quickly walked that back this morning, saying in an interview that he does not think we're there yet. Shep.
Peter Doocy, thank you. It will be interesting to watch this. Will Republicans now want to get all of the information that they can find, all of it, out in the open? So whatever it is that's coming, good, bad, or indifferent, it can be ended and the legislative agenda can begin prior to getting close to the 2018 midterm elections. That's one strategy. The other strategy is to slow roll this thing. And it will be interesting, if not telling, it will certainly be interesting to see which it is that Republicans tend to prefer. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has said President Trump did not share classified information with his country's ambassador and foreign minister, and he offered to give U.S. lawmakers a transcript of the meeting to prove it, as if a Russian transcript of anything would prove anything to anyone. Yes, with sound effects. That naturally led to questions about whether Russia recorded the conversation, which might be a little different. Today, the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said he didn't have a clue.
Mr. Secretary, Vladimir Putin is offering Congress a transcript of that Lavrov Oval Office meeting. Do you think the Russians were bugging the Oval Office?
I would have no way to know that.
No way to know if Russia bugged the meeting. Russia bugging a meeting. Can't imagine. In response to Putin's comment, some Republican lawmakers say they are not buying the idea that the Russian leader has anything to offer.
Well, I don't talk to murderous dictators like Vladimir Putin. And look, he says that he doesn't use GPS-guided bombs to bomb hospitals in Syria, and we know that to be untrue. So Putin's word to me really doesn't mean a whole lot.
Yeah, Adam Kinzinger with Allison Camerata, our friend over at CNN. In a different interview, the Maine Senator Susan Collins says it's absurd to think that lawmakers would accept any so-called evidence from Putin. Rich Edson's at the State Department. What else did Vlad have to say?
Well, he offered denials, criticism, even jokes. Russian President Vladimir Putin jokingly said he's going to reprimand his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, for failing to share sensitive U.S. intelligence with him or Russian intelligence services after he had his meeting in the Oval Office last week with President Trump. Then Putin claimed the U.S. has political schizophrenia.
What surprises me is that they are shaking up the domestic political situation in the United States using anti-Russian slogans. Either they don't understand the damage they're doing to their own country, in which case they are simply stupid, or they understand everything, in which case they are dangerous and corrupt people.
This all comes as the United States is trying to negotiate with Russia, in particular press Russia to drop its support of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, Shep.
There's word, Rich, that other nations are concerned about sharing intelligence with the United States now. Any validity to that?
Now, there are some former ambassadors and intelligence officials who are saying there could be a situation where other nations would have pause or concern with sharing intelligence with the United States because of what happened last week. We spoke with one former ambassador, U.S. ambassador to NATO and Russia, who says the United States has some explaining to do on how it handles its intelligence.
Well, I think we have some reassuring to do, but I think the administration can be effective in convincing people that they can continue to share with us, and we can share with them. It's I think, critical if we're going to deal with threats like ISIS or deal with the threatening behavior of Russia, that we're able to have full confidence in our key partners.
National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster said the president's conversation last week with the Russian foreign minister in the Oval Office was wholly appropriate. Chet.
Rich Edson, our man at the State Department. Thank you. You know, the markets hate uncertainty. And today, and for the first time since the White House turmoil really began, it's reacting with concern. Analysts say traders are worried that President Trump's controversies will delay tax reform and other parts of his agenda. The closing bell is just minutes away. We're down 1.5% at the moment off the session lows, but still -3 hundo. We'll watch for any late movement. Much more ahead on the